2005 Nissan Murano rear brake replacement. I'm Brian Eslick from How To Automotive, and I'm going to walk you step by step through that process. We'll start by getting it on the hoist. If you're doing this at home, floor jack it up and put jack stands under the good spot would be right about here on the frame, and remove your rear wheels. So after getting your wheel off, you want to take off the top 14mm bolt like so. If you try to take the bottom one off, it'll come out and it'll hit the lower control in here and it won't come off. So what we do is we take the top one out, and you can rotate the caliper out of the way, and then on the back side you can remove the 19mm here and the 19mm there, and the whole caliper bracket and everything will come off. Okay, now that you got the 19s removed, the whole thing will slide out like so, and then what you can do is slide the caliper off. So you slide it out of the pin like so, and you just set it aside. And go ahead and take your caliper bracket and set it aside. Now we need to remove the rotor to machine the rotor. If you haven't mic'd it out to make sure, now would be the time you would mic this and see if it's in spec. If you guys don't have access to a brake lathe, you would take it down to your local automotive shop. Tell them you have a 2005 Nissan Murano here. You want to machine the rotors, and they'll measure them for you, and they'll cut the rotors. Of course, they're going to charge you a small fee, but so most likely when you go to take the rotor off, it's going to be stuck and won't come off. And what you can do is take a hammer like so and smack it right there, and that'll break this seal free, and then you can work your rotor off. Now that you got your rotor off, you go ahead and inspect your emergency brake shoes. Make sure they're nice and thick. They don't look like they've been barbecued from somebody leaving them on or anything. And just make sure all the hardware and everything looks like it's in good shape, and in the places it's supposed to be. And that's pretty much all you got to do for that. Now we're going to throw it on the brake lathe and machine the rotor. Okay, while our rotors are machining, what I like to do is take a little wire brush like this and run it in the channels where the brake hardware is, and clean them up, and then inspect the hardware. If the hardware is really in bad shape or whatever, I will replace it. If it's in good shape, I'll just re-lute. I'll put a little thin layer of it's called Seal Glide brake grease. Or a lot of the brake pads, they come with the little grease packets in the with them in the box, and I just use that grease. That grease is designed especially for brakes that for high heat, so it doesn't break down. So I put a very thin layer on it. If you put too much, it will build up dirt and grime on it, and it'll actually cause the pads to stick. So just a thin layer is all you need. And then also, you're gonna take your pins that were in here, the bolts that went through, and you're gonna lube those up and run them in and out of the channels here, and make sure everything's free and moving. So after the caliper bracket's prepped, now we're gonna prep the brake pads, the new pads that's going in. So what I like to do is I like to match up the pads that came out of, so I'm marking on the passenger side here. So this is the passenger side setup, and that'll be the inner pad, and then this will be the outer pad where it doesn't have the the squealer on it. So I like to put a little thin layer of that Seal Glide grease in the back. That also helps prevent vibrations and squeaks. Now that we got our rotor machine, we need to put it on and check our adjustment for the park brake, and if it's too loose, you need to adjust it. And the way you can do that is you can pull this little plug out and then line it up with the adjuster and adjust it, or you can pull the rotor off and adjust it a couple clicks, and then put the rotor back on and see how it feels. So you just want to feel a drag, a light drag, where basically these shoes are barely touching the edge of the rotors, the inside of the rotor. So now we need to, after we got our park brake adjusted, we need to push the piston back in. So I have a tool here, it's kind of like a cocking gun, and it pushes the piston back in. If you don't have a tool like this, you can use a C-clamp or a large pair of channel locks. And the way I do it at the shop here is I don't open the bleeder screw, I leave it closed. And so what you're gonna have to do is you're gonna have to suck out a little fluid out of the master cylinder, because when you push this piston in, it's gonna fill the master cylinder up, and if it has too much fluid in it, it'll spill out into the engine bay. So suck out just a hair of a little bit of a fluid, and then you can press this in. And then after you're done with the brakes, you'll pump the brake pedal, and it'll push the piston back out and reseat everything. And if you have a nice firm hard pedal, you don't have to bleed the brakes. If the pedal is soft or anyway spongy, then you would have to bleed the brakes after you're done. And if you open the bleeder screw for any reason, you'll have to bleed the brakes. So now it's time to put the new brake pads into the bracket here, and put the caliper back together and put it on the car. But before we do that, what I like to use is a little blue thread locker, and put it on the threads of the bolts that hold the caliper on. And that helps because they don't have lock washers, so that helps prevent them from working their way back off. So what I've done here is I started the top bolt and left the bottom one out, and I put it on, and I put my inner pad on, put my outer pad on. And the reason why I did that is now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my caliper like this and hook it in there and lift it up a little bit. Now I can slide it into place. Now slide it back down. Now I can put my bottom bolt on, and I can tighten these two bolts down. And after it's tightened, then I can flip this up and put my the top bolt in and tighten and make sure both of these bolts are tight. Now that you got the bolts, all 4 of the bolts on here tight, now you're going to put your wheel on, torque the wheel down. You're obviously going to duplicate the same process on the opposite side. So you put your wheel on, torque it down, lower the car down, and then pump your brake pedal before you drive it. And if you have a spongy pedal, then you will need to bleed it. If your pedal is nice and firm, you're good to go. And that's pretty much completes the brake service on a 2005 Nissan Murano. I'm Brian Eslick from How To Automotive, and I'd like to thank you guys for watching my videos and remind you to subscribe. And thank you very much.